talked to a lady who had seen one of the giant mummies that came out of Lovelock Cave, and this lady swore that thing was. She said her brother was like 6'6", and it made him look small.
Now, you were talking about, just go over it again, just how big it was and how it impressed you.
To me, it looked like, well, because it's laying on the floor.
Okay.
And it's in this glass enclosed. I guess it's supposed to be a coffin, I don't know. But from his, like, here down, I mean, he looked enormously long. So to me, he was 7 feet or more.
And the bones were all together and not pulled apart. And
I don't recall, to me, they were interlocked. I mean, they were just, the bones went with the body. It wasn't fake.
Yeah.
But his head, I don't recall any hair being on his head, and I don't recall seeing his hands.
What about the skull and the face?
Well, to me, the nose holes, the nostrils were larger, and the skeleton, the head of the skeleton was not humongously different, but it was longer than what a normal skeleton head that I've seen.
Yeah.
That's, to me, he was a real skeleton.
And when you saw it, what was your reaction when you saw it for the first time?
I just thought, oh my God, because it was so big. I mean, I've never seen it. My brother's 6'6", 6'7". This thing was a lot bigger than my brother. And I mean, to me, it was just, I've never seen anything that huge, that long. So when he was standing up, it would have...
He would have been like a giant, really.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, to me he would.
Yeah.
He was a giant laying down, so I can imagine if he was standing up. But I don't recall the color of his bones. To me, they were white. But I really couldn't. This was back, like I say, this was back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And
a long time ago.
Oh, yeah. And I saw him one time, and that was it.
Well, not the kind of thing you want to see every day. I mean, it may end up giving you nightmares.
Yeah, but it was just unusually big.
When you find something that's worth being an attraction at a museum, it's got to have something unusual about it,
Yeah.
All right, folks, we're back with MK Davis, and it's been quite a 24 hours, that's for sure. How's it going, Sheldon? Thank you for being there. Thank you for always being there. One of these days, I think I'll make you monitor or moderator, as they call it. So, hey, how you doing, MK?
Well, I'm good. How are you, Michael?
Well, I feel overwhelmed at times. So, yeah, we were talking a little bit. Let me sidetrack a little bit about what I saw last night. I saw a streak of light in the sky and tried to take a film of it. And then I swear on my, I don't know how you say it, but I would swear on the Bible, I guess, as they say, that I saw a very spherical ball-like light.
Can I share? I'll show you your picture back at you.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Now, that shows it a little better.
Of course, it's distorted because it was not stable. I normally use a tripod, but I only had like a few seconds to take a picture. So.
Well, you don't always have your choice about when opportunity is there. You have to just go for it. Photography of any type is mostly opportunity. It's I mean, you got to know some stuff, but mostly you're in the right place at the right time.
The right situation. Yeah, you got to be set up too. I mean, it's night. It was dark. And my camera wasn't really set up for taking night images. And I imagine it might get a better image if I had my flash up too. It was pretty darn close. As I told you, it lit up the roof of my neighbors' houses and the top of the trees. So I don't even know how big it actually was. It seemed big, but then, like I said, there's like, I wonder if I have I don't know if I'd go with this, but there seemed to be something trailing it, and there was a balloon as well. And of course, there's been reports about this balloon nonsense and the Chinese and all that. And then we think about Project, or what's it, Blue Beam? Is that what it is? And this whole, the possible fake alien invasion, and also tying it all in with their agendas, the bigger agendas, or maybe how much of this is just a light show, you know what I mean? How much is it just
It would have to be pretty expensive to be streaking across the sky like that.
yeah.
I mean, they can do it. They could stage something like that, sure.
Well, you think of Michigan, there was a little bit of a shutdown of the airspace yesterday. Apparently, it was lifted. It wasn't up long, but I'm telling you, it was going. Basically, it's almost. I mean, in practicality, it was literally on the Michigan, Ohio line, borderline, for whatever that's worth, and because I can see where the alleged line, the border from Michigan is from my back. That's how close I am to the alleged Michigan borderline. So I don't know. It was quite peculiar that it happened so conveniently. You know what I mean? And of all places to show up, I just wondered how many other people saw anything, and I haven't been able to find anything on the news yet. But for whatever it's worth, but yeah, go ahead.
These are the days. Used to be somebody may never see a UFO or anything like that in their lifetime, and now it's a commonplace, and even it's on the news, and it's press coverage, and the government admits it. Wow, what is going on? It does make a person think, don't it?
And because it's quite rational and reasonable to question the government narrative because of past behavior, right? I mean, what is really going on? Is it just simply and it doesn't make any sense to me, MK. So why would China waste their time and energy and money unless it might has some kind of connection with the next phase? They're supposed to, as the World Economic Forum and over there and Gates and everybody and saying with the next pandemic, they're going to use that as part of that excuse. You know what I mean? Because it could be a pretty good delivery system to make some people sick if you think about it.
Well, I mean, yeah, if it's highly contagious, all you got to do is get it started. It will take on a life of its own.
Yes, it will, and that's the thing. And if we think about propaganda and how important it is, especially in the beginning stages of a major conflict, prepping the population for it, with what's been going on this past 12 months, makes you wonder. I mean, my history, what I study of history, it reminds me an awful lot of the beginning of World War I, to be honest with you. Very similar tales, but with different technology this time. So, MK did.
That's the first time, really. World War II is the first time I can remember where the government staged something.
Now we're talking about over there in Hawaii and Pearl Harbor, right?
Well, no, I'm thinking about the German government.
Oh yeah.
They blew up the Reichstag and then blamed someone else in order to start persecutions and stuff like that. It used deception and deviance and misdirection. It's and stuff now that you hear about down through the years, and now especially, where people have kind of lost their trust. Yet they wonder, and legitimately so, if if this is not some example of that. You know, why would they do it? How do you? We hire the government. I mean, we elect them, we hire them. How do you hire somebody that won't do you that way? You know, what guarantees that they won't get up there and just tell you a bunch of junk?
Well, from anybody, if anybody's been around the block a few times, you just should be quite confident in that there is not much being told to you that is true. It seems to, it seems to be, at the end of the day, the oligarchs, it just seems to be a proven strategy that the biggest thing is, do not tell the populace, do not tell the peasants the truth about much of anything, because if you give up your hand, then you give up a lot of your power and perceived authority, right? As long as you have this, the perception being offered up to people that you are in the know and you have all the information, so just trust in us, and get people busy doing their own things and raising their families. And then, it's quite easy actually to be manipulated. In fact, I'll be honest, for most of my life, that's what I would describe my life. One manipulation after another, one bit of misinformation and disinformation after another. That's why it's important. I think you're a valuable resource in this area of research, because you're willing to do the research and share some of it, and not just do it and profiteer off it and try to make. Which if you're doing it for the right reasons and you're sharing truth to the best of your ability, there's always going to be the question marks, right? Because we're such limited knowledge that we all are operating on, right? But if you do the best you can, right, you figure out what's going on, and you start seeing correlations and connections, and develop some sound theories. What's going on? But it's what's going on. I mean, it's quite clear that social engineering has been around our whole lives, right?
Yeah.
So,
and also the threat of socialism. That it's always been something that's, if you don't watch it, so people will try to establish it in your government or in your country. It's rejected by most people because it's been tried, but the socialists think that they didn't try hard enough. If we could just have one more chance, and so they weasel their way back in, using deception and all kinds of misdirection and stuff. And oddly enough, once they get in there, they accuse anyone who might object of misinformation. The very thing that they were good at, they accuse the population at large. It's kind of a crazy thing. Who could sort such a thing out? It's the average person quits caring. After a while, it gives you a headache and you quit caring.
I think it's part of the strategy, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
It's clearly it's what it is, right? You after you do enough research and observation, you realize how many times you have been misled and deceived. You're just like, well, whatever. And I think that's where they want us in a lot of ways, because if you feel like you're powerless over the situation, you just will withdraw, right? And it's a very powerful tool as far as manipulation goes.
How many things about the pandemic have we now found to be untrue or exaggerated? Or it was a bad pandemic. It killed a lot of people. I have friends that died, but then on the other hand, some of the things that we were doing to mitigate it were
Caused it.
well, it wasn't of any value. You know,
Well,
it's causing people to have mental problems.
I can share you a few things. Like my mother, she after they gave her the jibber jab, she ended up having a blood clot in her brain and stroke and died a few weeks later.
Oh my gosh, I hate to hear that.
And I know when I was out on the street, trying to warn people, one of the things they did was called the magnetic test. And that is those who took jibber jab were, keys and magnets. I would say you want to see if you're magnetic or not after taking the thing. And sure enough, the few people that were brave enough to do it, out of the hundreds that I asked, only 22 were willing. 11 were
exactly. Did you put a magnet on their skin, or what? Did you
well, it is a key and a magnet, and so wherever the location was. By the way, some of them, it wasn't just sticking where the location and where the incident happened. It was the other side too. There was magnetic. Their foreheads were magnetic. My little brother his kneecaps were magnetic. So, and then that goes into this thing called graphene oxide, and I'm going to tell you the reason why that's the reason why I took down my channel. One of the things that took down, I don't know if you knew this, but maybe you noticed that on Facebook, but when you were doing your live yesterday. Thursday they banned me from doing any lives or posting up videos on my other channel, so I had to start new ones. That's what we're doing here. On my new channel, which is not the first time this has happened to, because they took down my channel on the 6th of January of 2021 as well, along with thousands of other small channels. And I think they're worried about not so much the big channels. I think they're more easier to manipulate. It's the small channels like myself who are not invested financially in this stuff. So, and death by a thousand cuts. So I think that's what they're worried about, right? If there's thousands of guys like me talking out, we actually ironically have more of an influence than the big names, because people have there's groups of people that follow me, and they usually are like-minded thinking people, right? So that's what they did. In the early morning of January 6, 2021, I woke up and my channel was gone. And it was the same old thing.
you get any kind of explanation?
What they've been using is called medical misinformation, right? The irony is that last week, anything that I said or posted was not anything that was not already posted on YouTube or shared on channels like Fox News and all the big channels, right? But they just says medical information. They said I had too many strikes, and I'm like, well, I didn't know I had any strikes at all on this new channel. But apparently they're holding on to strikes from, if I did have any, it must have been from a year ago. So it is what it is. You know what I mean? If you're going to speak truth, this, there's always going to be pushback one way or the other. So,
well, you can't fight an algorithm.
Yeah, it's true. Isn't it? And you try, and I did contest it, and it's like, well, they never, as usual. Now, if it's maybe one of the bigger channels that had the legal team and all that, then I might have a little more recourse. But hey, Julio, you're back, man. Thank you, man. Yeah. So, anyways, this is where, as usual, this is how it. When you're talking to a friend, which I consider MK to be a friend and somebody that I respect, that conversations like this go all over the place. But I think it's valuable. So that, at least it is for me. So. We got an image posted up here. We'll share this. MK has got his hat and all sorts of things. And he's not the only one that's got a hat and all these things. Let's try to see if we can share this. What is going on? Okay, there it is. So that's not MK's hat. I think that's Ron's hat, isn't it?
No, that's Don Monroe's hat.
Don's hat. Excuse me. Not Ron. Why did I say Ron? So yeah, and it's hard to see what we're seeing here, but maybe as time goes on, Maybe if you're interested, I don't know if you're prepared. We don't even go down this route. We don't. But I find it interesting watching that video, and there's several videos that he has posted up on Facebook about the Lovelock Cave, that area. Is it Carlson? Is that what it is? What is the area called?
Oh, wait, where Lovelock Cave is?
Yes.
That's northern Nevada. Oh, uh, it's near. It's outside of the town of Lovelock.
Okay, but where the lady was in Carlson?
Oh, yeah, Carson City.
Carson. Why did I say Carson?
Yeah.
Let's get that.
Yeah.
Off. Name's terrible for me. So they had at some point allegedly they actually as late as the 1980s they had bones of this scene.
Yeah, that thing was on display. I've talked to a lot of people who saw it. It came out of Lovelock Cave. But when NAGPRA, that's the North American, it's Repatriation Act is what it is. What they made a law that if you had human remains, you had to return them to the tribe that closest kin, and they reburied them. And I don't know if they did that or not, or if they just decided to take it off display. But when NAGPRA came along, a lot of those places had remains. I remember I went out west one time years ago, and they had these advertisements on billboards that said, "See the thing," and that's all it said. 222 miles, see the thing. And then they have 20 miles down the road, they say, "See the thing," and they give you the mileage from there. And then by the time you made it to where there was no miles, you were ready to see the thing. And I went in there, and it was a little bitty mummy they found in a cave, a little child. And it was real. It was authentic. They had it, under glass. They're in a gas station, a kind of a convenience store of the day. It was more gas station than convenience store. But you won't find that now because you're not allowed to do that.
No, now that we're not specifically talking about these bones. So where are these bones now? Do you have any idea?
Those bones? No, I don't have any idea. They may have just taken them off display and done something, just hit them or something, or they may have actually turned them over to the tribes and let them rebury them. I really don't know. There's a lot of arguments that have been made that the certain set of bones are not Native American. It happened with Kennewick Man. They wanted Kennewick Man to rebury, the Native Americans did. And scientists said, wait a minute, this is not a Native American person. Even though he had an arrowhead embedded in his back, they had him DNA tested, and he tested to be Caucasian. And he's also very old, like 11,000 years old, something like that. And they found him in the water of the Columbia River. And these people that found him, they just saw the skull first, and then they kept seeing more and more bones. And when they got through gathering up the bones, they had them all. And they took them to the university, and that's where this years-long battle began between the Native Americans and the scientists and universities. And they eventually got a judge to side with them that this was not a Native American. They had no claim on it. So they won't let anybody look at it. Nobody. They got him under lock and key. And they went out to where they found the bones and dumped concrete and riprap over the whole area to prevent anyone from finding any more.
It just doesn't make any sense.
Well,
Well, but
they
that,
must
I mean,
have
obviously there's
something we
some
don't know.
reason.
It's
I mean, why hide our history? I don't, people say it's religion, but I don't even see really any reason, even religiously, why that you would hide that. I don't see any value. I mean, it's not like in the scriptures it doesn't mention giants, and you know what I mean? So I don't know why that would be the issue. So I wonder sometimes if there's something more going on. Even, let's go beyond, because let's be honest, these people that run this joint, the rulers of evil, as I call them, they don't really, their treaties, or they value them as about as much as I don't know, a meal from I don't know, McDonald's or whatever. You know what I mean? It's not really. It's not. I don't know why they would even care. In the end of the day, how many treaties have they not, or have they have just disavowed, disrespected, just threw to the side. So it's not like they value treaties. So why are they so concerned about indigenous rights, indigenous people's rights, when they've never, ever? I mean, you get the social pressure all you want, but at the end of the day, they don't care.
I really don't understand the issue. I understand that they have those rights, and I understand why. But like I said, the fighting, they're going to court. What they tested to be not a Native American, So I really don't know why they still felt after that they should bury him, but they did. So they keep it under lock and key. I don't know why they do that either. I don't know why they won't let him.
Listen, I'm going to throw out something that's a little bit bizarre and off left field, but maybe there is something to it, and we just don't recognize it. Necromancy and the bodies of the ants, bones of we look at like Catholic tradition of relics, right? And claiming they're this, that, and the other, usually to be fraudulent. But regardless of that, you'll see these skeletons and bones and skulls and the lower chambers of cathedrals and in the Vatican and et cetera, et cetera. And there's a reason for they do it. There's not just simply superstition. I wonder if they there's a connection to that maybe at the very top, at least, whether it's true or not, whether there's any scientific or legitimacy to their belief. Maybe their belief itself is the contribution to hiding these bones. Does that make sense? In other words, if they actually believe that there's supernatural power of these bones and these bits, right, and pieces,
I don't think that's the case. I think that the belief system, at least on some native tribes, are very similar to like the Egyptians. They believe that when you pass away, you go to another life, and they prepare the body just like the Egyptians do. They make a mummy for that life, and they send everything that he needs or she needs to maintain that other life. And I know the Natchez Indians would sacrifice all of a person's servants if it was a real important person, like their chief. Their chief is called the sun.
Right.
Yeah, and they would take, if he died, then and this they would volunteer to do this. I mean,
now, when you say the sun, like with the U or no? First of all,
SUN.
Okay.
Sun. They call him the sun.
All right.
And nobody could even approach him without this going through this cleansing and ceremonies. It was very Egyptian like. But when he passed away, all of his servants, they would take tobacco and they would grind it up in a pestle and mortar until it was just a puree. And then they would dry it, roll it into ball, and dry it, make a peel.
Right.
And they would give their servants, they would take them up on the mound, and they would have two people, one on either side, and they'd put a cord around their neck, and they would swallow 3 of those tobacco pills. They were like 10 times more powerful than regular tobacco. And they would go out of it pretty quick. And they would go like this. You disappeared. Oh, there you are.
I'm trying to see if I want it. I know it's not very good, but I'm I'm listening to you. I'm just gonna hide. I'm gonna sunbathe while we're talking here. Is that all right?
Yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
gonna soak up some sun. So,
Well, anyways, they as they begin to fade out and go unconscious, the two cords would tighten up around their neck, and they would transition them to the other life in a painless fashion. They would cut off their air as they could no longer, as they were not conscious anymore.
huh.
When they were right in between the consciousness and unconsciousness, they would tighten up, and they would send them over to the other life to be with the sun. And at times, there has been as many as 100 people sacrificed whenever the son passed away. If you wanted, they kept a temple on top of the mound called Temple of the Sun, and they kept an eternal flame there. And they had 4 guys that were responsible for keeping that flame going 24/7, 365 days out of the year. And if they let it go out, then they would be put to death. So you see what, they had a religious concept similar to the Egyptians, and if they needed to have the body, in order to be there. And I know that Ishi, the last truly wild, uncontacted Native American to come out of the woods in Oroville, California. Excuse me, in 1911.
This is where my brother lives, by the way, in Oroville, California. Just for
When he passed away, he had told his caretaker, Alfred Krober, he says, I don't want to be autopsied. I don't want anything like that done, because my beliefs are that I need everything to go to the happy hunting ground, or whatever they called it, the other side. Okay, he was assured that that would not happen. But after he died, Alfred Krober had his brain removed and sent it to the Smithsonian. And years later, this was way back in the early 1900s, and years later, there was an anthropologist named Orange Starn who was writing a book, and he was looking through the Alfred Krober's paperwork, and he found that letter to the Smithsonian. And when he did, he immediately turned the letter over to the local native tribes. They made a legal request to return the brain so they could put it with the rest of his remains, and they denied having it. And then they produced the correspondence letter between Krober and the Smithsonian. And when they did, they came up with it. And it was in a vat with 35 other brains floating. So you see what I mean? It's they eventually got it. Why would you have 18,000 skeletons? Imagine how many bones that is. How come you couldn't study that many bones?
Right. I mean, so it's like, I don't know. I could be absolutely
Well,
wrong about, but it seems like there might be a correlation with, if you think about the Jesuits and all these other priestcraft, these people that do practice a form of necromancy and they do value these things. And I wonder if they think that there's some kind of, I'm talking not about the Native Americans now. I'm talking about the people coming out of Europe that conquered this place. Our ancestors.
well, the Native Americans deserve better than that. That is
They sure
terrible.
do.
That's a miss. That is not just mishandling. It's almost criminal. I'd say they're not. They're
It's
immune
psycho-
to. They're
it's
immune to.
psychopathic. It's
They're
psychopathic.
immune to the Repatriation Act. They don't have to return anything. Orange Starn, to his credit, got Ishi's brain, through his actions, and then the local tribes got that brain returned and interred with the rest of his remains. That was important to Ishi, and they got it done. And so it took them 100 years, but that's what they're talking about. That those beliefs, whatever they are, should be respected. It's not something, you
But
can't dig up
obviously they don't. So
somebody's grandmother and dig them up and play with their bones.
right. Well, there just has to be some kind of more or something rational, or there's some logic behind it. Whether it's maybe there's nothing rational at all, but there's got to be. I don't see the value in us hiding all this stuff. I mean, might say, well, it's because of land grabs and all that, but honestly, they didn't care before. Then might is right in their minds. We're talking about the oligarchs, the rulers of this place. If they don't, if they want to take your frickin' place, they're going to take your frickin' place, regardless of what laws are in place. So why are they so obsessed with bones? I mean,
The Native Americans, it's part of their
no,
belief.
I'm not talking about the Native Americans.
You're talking about the.
I'm talking about our bosses.
The powers that be.
Right. Why are they so obsessed about the bones?
I can tell you what might be it. In the early days of the Smithsonian, and they first opened up their anthropology department, the general belief was a eugenics type of belief, that there were better people and there were worse people, and you could read a person's skull. You could measure it, read it, and tell if he was a superior or an inferior person or less than human. It was the Smithsonian. They in the early part of the United States history, they actually in law had listed people as 3/5 of a human.
And I would argue, MK, that not much of that's changed to this day.
Well, there's still some of it that goes on that hadn't legally changed. But
when you look at Gates and Melinda and Bill,
but we don't have. It's not state sponsored anymore. It used to be state sponsored. That's why the blacks couldn't vote. There was women. Anybody, if you had to. They read the Declaration of Independence in a literal fashion. That all men are created equal. That they didn't. That's not women, and not blacks, because they were 3/5 of a man. And you see what I mean? They devised ways to get around that.
Well, I would argue that there's the powerful subculture that's still running this place still have that mentality.
Well, perhaps eugenics. The Nazis got it from here.
That's true.
And they took it to another level. But you could if you were like in a war with somebody, they would go to the anthropology department there, the government would, and get who are we up against? What is their intellectual potential?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, well, due to the size of their brain and the bumps on their head, and blah, I'm gonna say that they're not a full human being, you know. So if you get a chance to blow him up, and they're not going to perform like a human. They're not going to have the morals, so to speak. They'll cut your head off and lick the blood and all that. You know, it's crazy. It seems crazy, but it was real,
and it still is. I believe. I mean, if you, it clearly still is. And that's an unfortunate fact. And in a strange way, this kind of goes back to Sasquatch. Think about that. Think about it for that second. If especially you spend an exorbitant amount of time, and if do you have like a good image, the truest, I know you do, the truest image of Patty, color wise and everything. I know you were talking about yesterday, and you were breaking it down. And I don't know if you'd be willing to share one of those images with us and post it on there, because it's all relative, all this thing. But if these things we call Sasquatch are part human, or some type of people, and we still have these kind of yahoos out there running the show, it might make, how do I say this? There could be part of the motive is to get rid of all those. It's almost like a eugenics program. Let's put it that way.
Well, yeah, eugenics. In back in the 1840s, the state of California had a $3 million coffer that they paid individuals to bring in Native American scalps, and they would pay you a bounty for that scalp. Now, that's what they do to animals. You see what eugenics does? It reduces a human being to less than a human being. And it legitimizes hunting them down with dogs and horses.
This is going back to Patty now.
Exactly.
I'm hearing similarity here.
It happened then, and it could be happening now, even as we speak.
So I don't know if you understood my request. I don't know if that's something you want to do or not. Just let me know if you don't. But if you got an image that we could share of, I would like for the folks to see the most accurate image that you have found of Patty, color-wise, everything. You know what I mean? I'm saying, because there's a lot of.
Let me look for. I've got so many of them. I want to make sure I get.
Well, while you're doing that, I'll talk while you're so. Yeah, so there is a connection. There's such. You can't just be myopic about this. The machinations that go on out there, it's complex. And when you see what's going on at Lovelock and the skulls there, and what's going on in that cave, and what you guys found in that cave, and what you found on the ground, those footprints, and you talk about Patty, and then you talk about eugenics, and you talk about religion itself, extremist religion in particular. There's certain people that are their minds have been so twisted that they have a hard time seeing others as equals or as human beings. But I mean, let's be honest with us. If you can use the scriptures, if you will, to as a way to actually manipulate or justify what you've been saying, how to take advantage of other people, right? Take their land, take their resources, get rid of them, literally. And we've seen this not by a few thousand or a few million, but probably we talked about hundreds of millions of last century, and I'm pretty confident that those numbers are pretty darn low when you put everything in totality, right? Because war comes in many different facets, right? It's not just guns. There's butter involved too, right? There's the use of propaganda, the use of all of other devices that we conjure up in order to take from others. So you don't necessarily have to have bombs or a balloon floating over your house. There's many other ways to do it. So one of the ways to do it is convincing people that what we're dealing with is something less than us or less valuable than us, right? Whether it's history, whether it's something like Sasquatch, which I'm still, more and more I study this, what we're, at least where I'm at, we're not dealing with what you got out west. You know, my brother lives in Orville, and he, around that area, like I said, he's had a sighting with a Sasquatch, him and his wife. And it's not the same thing that I experienced. We're dealing with several different things here. So when you go out west and we see the complexity that's hidden in plain sight, it seems like the only people that recognize what's really going on are people like yourself and Don, and people that are privately going out there and researching. Some people that have a little bit of historical background and understanding of some of the culture of the past. Anthropologists seem to understand what's really going on, but they're hiding it.
Well, it's the very same modus operandi, that you reduce them to something less than a human, and then you have your way with them. And that's, you know, the Sasquatch. What do they say a Sasquatch is?
Well, they try to convince people it's an ape.
That's an ape, less than a human, and so they need to kill one to get a body, right?
Which is it's a justification for eliminating, right? It's a rationalization.
If you kill 100 of them, there's no law against killing apes in North America. If you get it established that it's an ape, you see what I'm talking about now. Now, I don't pretend that I know the full nature of a Sasquatch, but I know that it's got all the same tools that we do.
Right. And how many people have said that they described it as human-like?
Yeah, well, that would need to be studied in some way, you know, with some kind of a process that would be, slam dunk. It would establish for sure. But let me just show this. I'll share this right here. Hold on.
Am I in your way? Am I blocking it? Right?
No, I'm good. I just didn't see it.
If my image, if you have a problem getting it up, let me know. I'll remove mine because I'm not sure seeing it.
That should,
which is an interesting hieroglyph or carving into the rocks there that looks like a sun.
Now I have to find my file I had it running. There it is.
Okay, we'll get you going. And then, I think what I need is stop my screen. I think that would help.
Can you see it?
What you need to do. How come I'm not? Can you guys see that? Tell me if you can see that image, because I can see it. Yeah, I can see it. So, yeah, do you guys see this video, Julio or Sheldon? Just give me a confirmation. Magic can do many mysterious things. Let me know if you can see the video that just posted. I see it. Okay, good. All
right. What is it? What do you think it is? I mean, what is? How does it strike you?
Well, you start out with, at least for me, I'm just going to speak for myself, a guy in a suit until someone like you starts pointing out the intricacies, the details and the intricacies of the what's going on here. And then it looks relatively human-like.
Well, it's got the hair. It's got
like a super hairy
an arrangement.
humanoid
It's-
type person.
Yeah, it doesn't really have that much hair. You see, it's got a light colored skin beneath the hair. It really it's kind of haired over. You know, not like fur. There's hairy people. I'm gonna see if I can find a picture of one. I had one.
You know what it reminds me of? Goat hair.
Well, it's
In a way.
a fine hair,
Yeah.
and it's different on different parts of the body, like our hair is. Let me find an example here.
But it's it's walking very human like, but it's not a human, and I understand why people would first glance say, oh, that has to be a big guy in a suit.
I wouldn't say that it's not human. I say that it's not us.
Well, what I'm saying is
Not
very
modern man.
no, it's very human like is what I'm saying. And so I can say that because it's very human like, I can see how people at first glance without putting any effort and time in it would say, oh, that's a guy in a suit. But the more you put time into it, you're like, yeah, they're something that's very it's animal and human like, that's walking in the woods, that's physical. I mean, you have already demonstrated there's no reason for you to exaggerate or lie about it. If you said that 12 people have tried to claim to be the person in the suit, at least a dozen. Is that correct, MK?
Yeah, quite a number of them.
So if right there alone pretty much discredits all of them, you can't take any of it seriously, no matter who they are and how much they might know Patterson or Gilman or whoever, because if you got at least 12 people claiming to be the person in the suit, which I don't understand why anybody would want to do that, honestly. I mean, even if it's for a buck or for attention, it's like it's always it's going to backfire on you. So why is this happening?
All right, can you see what I've got up now?
Yeah, can you magnify it? There you go. Yeah. Zoom in. So there's the head. There's sure her of a
There's the raw.
ponytail.
It's the raw image on the left, and that's the filter, and you can see this. She's got arranged hair that's tied back there,
Which is very human like. It's not animal like. There's just no way that
it's that does. What I'm saying is different from us, maybe in some respects, but not less than us.
or of less value.
Yeah, less value. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's they have their own way of living, but they're comfortable doing it. You don't try to exterminate.
Well, they seem like the people that actually, if there's the common theory, and it's very rational to think this, that they are the original or a type of original people of this place that you and I live in. We stick out like a sore thumb. They seem to be able to live in the environment that's, nature, the outdoors. We, for the most part, without shelter, without some help and assistance, we stick out like a sore thumb, like we have been genetically engineered, or that we don't belong here in the first place. Does that make sense? I mean, you know what I'm talking about. Everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I just think that the things that we now know are wrong, and we pass laws to prohibit that we used to do, cannot just be taken back up again. So you're going to have to figure this one out. That the man in a suit thing is not working. The film's too good. So
could you imagine if that was a guy in a suit? What a miserable day it was.
He couldn't pull that off. I can tell you that.
I would be grimacing and have a pissed look on my face too if I was a dude in a suit doing that. Just imagine how. You would have to be a massively. I mean, I've seen, and we've all seen a big guy. There's some big guys out there, real big guys. But to be that big and to be able to pull off the details, I mean, you would have to practice that in an immense amount of times to pull it off. That's what I'm saying.
Now take a look at this.
Yeah, look. I mean, look at the boot. I mean, uh,
That bright.
is that the closest to the true color of the hair?
No, it's probably not. What I did was to drive the color of the hair and the color of the skin apart from one another, where you could tell which one was which. This is probably brighter, a little more on the yellow side, but she does have light colored skin. The hair color is probably accurate.
More like a white to gray area.
The skin could probably go down a few tones, but
they're more fleshy, like human color skin, like a pinkish.
It's going to be color of a Native American, about that color. That's been outdoors.
The size of that head. There's just no way that the more you look at that. I mean, I've seen some dudes with big heads. I mean, the size of that head is so big. I got a feeling that, I mean, if she wanted to take a bite on you, she could take a big chunk out of you, and you know what I mean?
If that were the case, but that it doesn't appear to be on her mind. It's like they're going to have to live with this film.
I know they tried I tried myself, started out trying to disprove it. At least I was honest and come to terms with the fact that I couldn't disprove it. So, but it seems like they went way out of the way to alter it and distort it. And I understand about copyright issues and trying to make money off it.
Every way in the book to wipe this film off the face of the earth.
But there's like such an agenda, and I can see part of the logic would be, okay, if these things are human-like, then I can see why they're. And we've had this conversation has been spoken 1,000 upon thousands of times, but we're going to go over it again. So there could possibly that they're worried about these things being human-like, and they try to have reserves or areas reserved to them, right? And they're trying maybe seriously to protect them, but I don't see that. In the end, I see.
I don't know what protecting means. I just think that education should be sufficient. If just show them this film and say, look, there's somebody living out there that we don't know everything there is to know about them, but they're out there. Don't mess with them. They seem to do okay. Look at this right here.
It reminds me of a combination between the story of Cain and Esau, like subtly, allegorically, they were bringing it up that we've been dealing with this for thousands of years, and for some reason, I think, well, part of the logical thing why to kind of keep this a hush and hush, knowing how human beings are, I think there's a whole bunch of yahoos that would go out there and wipe them all out, just for the sport of it, just for the game of it.
Well, I mean, there are people who down here in the South, especially, and I know have a lot of friends that believe that they can get a body and get it proven. But the question is it the same thing you see on this film?
That's a good question.
What they say they see does appear like an animal. Gets down on all fours and runs and, that sort of thing,
but I can't see Patty doing that same thing.
Well, I couldn't either. It may be just apples and oranges. I tell you what, a trained hunter would never put a gun on her unless he was willing to do a crime, because he would look at her if he got a good look, and it would go against everything that their daddy taught them on hunting. You don't shoot something you're unsure of. You don't shoot something that you even think might be a human. You know, she has nothing to worry about. It's people who have a monetary
Could you blow up that image more? Could you fill it up?
a
I'll tell you
monetary a
what I'm
monetary.
gonna do. What I'm gonna do? See if I can get this. Let's see. Nope.
You can see that she's got a little braid. It's the wind is taking it over her ear, and it's laying down on her cheek, and her ear is exposed for a frame or two. The wind just blew it like this.
Oh, that's weird. I see what's going on. You got what is going on here?
That's the raw image. You can see it on the raw image.
Yeah, I can see it. I'm trying to figure out. You see the image that's going on. How's come there? I can see a double image of you and I.
A double image? I don't know.
That's what I'm trying to figure this out because I want us to focus on this image. I really want us to focus on this image. Yeah. Well, forget about that. I want people to have a better look at that. The ear and the that, but for some reason, yeah, for some reason, you got that. It's like tripling, double. Yeah, can you blow that one up? Expand it. And
Pretty big right now.
Okay. So this thing has it has teeth. It has that traditional, or I've heard numerous times about their ears are different than ours. They're kind of a weird looking ear.
It's a little bit. I'd say it has. You'll find X number of people that have an ear like that. You know, there's all kinds of different styles on the ear. That may be a better word rather than to say this is another race of human. It may be it's better to call it another style. It's just it's more suited for living
A type.
in the mountains. In those cold places, and it's just the way it. We don't know half of it. We've only got this is the best we have, and it's
Can we see the blow up image now? The one on the other side, because it's cut off, so we can see it better. So what's going around the mouth there? Can people tell us what's going on there?
It's got kind of a little snarl on it, a little closed mouth. It's looking back at them. It
looks a little bit beat up too.
Lips are tight.
Are we looking at a tongue as well?
I don't think so.
Okay, all right.
This is a closed lip right here. It's got a little bit of kind of looks like a cleft right there, but I don't know if that's the case or not. Nobody has a right to go and hunt these things down with horses and dogs. It's not open season on them.
But that's exactly what happened that day.
Yeah, it was exactly what happened.
So let's go over a little bit about, if you're willing to. I mean, it's up to you. You don't have to go deep if you don't want. I'll respect your limit on this. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not trying to stir anybody up or anything, and I'm not. Every time I go to talk somewhere, I'm not going to bring this up. It's I mostly promote the film as authentic. And
well, it's pretty much well established. The questions arise: A, how did they make it happen? And B, what happened after the fact? I mean, I'm hearing all sorts of different stories.
Well, there's a lot of, you can do a lot of damage if you got a really good dog and a group of people that are more than willing to pull a trigger. So, these things aren't exactly, speed demons. A dog can outrun one.
Especially the patty type, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Now, the ones that's down here, you have to let people be their own judges. You can prepare them. You can say, well, I kind of don't think that this one, that the ones here in the South that living in the swamps are quite what that one is up in the mountains, but if you see one, what did your daddy tell you? When he trained you to hunt, did he tell you just throw the gun up and shoot, then go over and see what you shot?
No, they tell you to know what you're shooting at and what you're aiming at before you pull the trigger.
Everybody I know that's pro kill, I have all the confidence in the world that they would never pull the trigger on that old girl right there. Because it's obvious, that just at least you can question whether it's a human or not. I don't know, what else you can call it. It displays intelligence, and it ties its own hair up. It's
Right.
got a braid.
It's got a braid. It's carrying something. It's carrying something.
Carrying something in his left hand there. That's kind of a good clue right there. But there are greedy people who will shoot you and me. If they can get wealthy off of it. Right.
And here's the other thing too. It seems to me, you mentioned a little bit that there were multiple parties that could possibly been involved in this from at least 2 different countries.
Well,
and possibly, and I'm not saying this was not, but it was also kind of leads to the suggestion that there's possibly 2 different governments involved and and how did Hollywood actually, how did it end up on the movie theater? And how did the government why did it not stop it? That's a good question.
Well, they had this fantastic film worth lots of money, but they could not market it in its original form because it showed way too much. So they edited it. They very carefully edited it where they tried to make it look like it was continuously running from the beginning to the end. But it's very clear that it wasn't. It's been spliced. So they edited the part out that was they figured would be the most incriminating part. And I'll be honest with you, in a court of law, I don't know that they would get in trouble, because there's certain things, criteria that has to be met. There's no one missing. There's no paper trail. No one's gone to the authorities and said, I'm missing one. And then it's you could argue that I didn't kill a human. So you might get off, lock, stock, and barrel. But that morally speaking, you're doing the same thing that they did to Native Americans. All those people got off lock, stock, and barrel with the laws of that day. But they broke every kind of moral law there was to break. So it's the same basic thing happening. The law don't quite cover this, and people get away with things. There's a few places that will punish you for shooting a Sasquatch, or counties up there in Washington State. They will punish you for it, but you're not going to, death row or anything. They don't know what they are. It has not been established. You can't get a scientist to admit that they're real. They can't even get past that. So how can you kill something that's not real?
Well, that's very convenient to create the situation so that people are constantly in doubt.
Well,
especially if there's well, there's some kind of threat to their own authority and power. They being, when I say they, all roads to me lead to the Vatican and to the monarchies of the Western Europe and Eurasia. So to that's, I still, from my impression, there's still are the major landowners, even in the Americas. You know what I mean? They're still going to have the final say in a lot of things, and a lot of our taxes still go back to the British Crown and to the Vatican, whether people want to hear that or not. And they're not being bigoted. I'm just telling you how it is. This is well established. And so why? So obviously this is a threat, not just because of land and not just because of farming or raising cattle or whatever. It's not even just, it seems to me that we've gone batshit crazy. That's what it seems. I think we just lost our bearings completely, and we just, anything that is even close to being a threat, we just wipe the damn thing out if we can.
That's whenever the gold was first found, 1840s in California, all those Native Americans became dispensable.
So yeah, if we know that something that's clear, fellow humans can be treated that way, then there's no reason to think otherwise. That the same thing was not going on. And this now goes back. Okay, so we got from all the way from the Northwest coast these totems and all these symbology of this, the wild man and Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and it goes all the way to Lovelock Cave. And to me, it seems like you and others have established a pretty clear connection between it all. Is there a possibility that what was going on in that bones that woman saw in 1980s was actually a Sasquatch?
Well, that I don't know.
I mean, is there? I'm not saying you do know, but I'm just saying, is there a possibility? That's a completely different thing. Because it seems, I mean, we're talking about huge skull, larger than life human beings, right? Then at least the skulls appear that way, right? Because we don't really know what was on top. For the most part, we don't know what's on top of those skulls, right? There might have been some hair and all that, but we don't know exactly what these things look like. We just, or do we? And if we do, what makes us think that they could be anything different than what was filmed that day called Patty? You mentioned that it almost had a reddish or kind of tint to the hair. What if these things are when they're more in the deserted sun? The beating of the sun that it becomes more orange, red, blondish, whatever. You know what I mean? I'm sure their hair changes a little bit, just like anything else does. So
there's been white ones. It's what I was looking for right here.
And so to me, it seems very clear. I mean, what you've done is you painted there seems to be strong connections with all of this.
I lost it. Let me find it again. Here it is. I want to read this to you. Can I do that?
Yes, you're here to teach us.
Okay. This is what Native Americans believe, that live in the area, have always lived in the area. They were never removed to any reservation. They've always lived in that valley. Okay, there's three tribes, and they all have the same belief. One's the Hoopas, one's the Yurok, and the other is Karuk. Okay, I'm going to read it. The Siskiyou Mountains are a small range in northwest California and southwest Oregon. In the southern part, they contain parts of the Klamath and Smith River watersheds. These watersheds are the traditional homelands of several Native American tribes, including the Yurok, Karuk, and they call it the Talawa. That's the Hoopa tribes of Northern California. These tribes have considered the high country to be of a special spiritual importance since times predating recorded history. Two of the rocks at the peaks of the high country are now called Dr. Rock and Chimney Rock. And Dr. Rocks is sometimes referred to as Medicine Rock. At about 4,000 feet, this region is held to be the center of the spiritual universe because it is believed that the original inhabitants of the world who left just as the humans appeared here, the high country is the site of a climb. Let's see, I've skipped too far. They climbed up through holes in the sky, and these high peaks are the last places they set foot on earth. Hence the high concentration of spiritual powers here. The high country is a site of a ritual performed individually and involving days of fasting and meditation to obtain spiritual purity amidst the silence and undisturbed serenity. The few members of these tribes who feel the call to become medicine people derive their powers during these rites. The medicine people are spiritual leaders and are an integral part of the culture. Although few individuals ever enter into these areas, they are of incalculable value to the entire society. So they say that they were just prior to modern man, they were the original inhabitants there. And they left and climbed up through holes in the sky from off those peaks.
Which you could take that numerous ways. From some people claim it's UFO, some people say
I just take it like they wrote it.
Or there were literally is a hole in the sky, right? An opening.
Well, I mean, I don't know what that hole in the sky was. I mean, I'll just have to say I don't know. Maybe it can be better explained, but I don't know what the hole in the sky is. I just take it as it was written. I was very surprised when I came across that, because that area is where the Sasquatch are living. Maybe that's who they're referring to. Maybe there was still some there. I don't know what a hole in the sky amounts to. It can be a portal, or it can be, a UFO, or I don't know.
Because it'd be, although I wonder if they're all the. I wonder if most of it is actually the same thing, whether we call it a portal or an orb or a flying out. There's something, a rip in time, spiritually. I don't know. Either nobody knows. But here's the thing:
they believe it so much that they form human chains to block equipment from coming in there.
Well, here's the thing: when you said they believe. What if they actually knew, but we're interpreting as they believe? They actually knew.
I mean, when I say belief, I mean that is what the way they see things. They have more to go on than I do. All I have is that piece, that little write up. But those shamans. Listen, I've been in Louse County camping, and I heard those shamans. They were up there training.
Okay.
They were chanting.
Yes.
So I know that to be.
I started, MK, everything we talk about stuff, it always goes back to something spiritual. I mean, I'm being honest about it. Now you're telling you, but they're out there chanting, the priests there in the Vatican, they're chanting in their little places, right? Their prayers and their spiritual formation and their 40 days and their whatever symbolically in the cave to the Tibetan monks talk about the same thing. I mean, there's to all these shamans, there is something. Whether we like it or not, it's spiritual in all of us.
it's a spiritual side to it, and it's almost we hunger for that spiritual side. If we don't have it, we kind of have a little void, and we try to fill it with something, whether it be going to church every Sunday, or whether it's going into out on nature walks, or try to fill it with something that's on the spiritual side, because we have that element about us all. Even atheists have a spiritual side. They don't agree with who is the ultimate spiritual person, but they recognize the spiritual side. So what makes those two peaks so important that they would stand in front of equipment?
And you said two peaks, like twin peaks, which is
there are two rocks on two little promontories up there. One is Medicine Rock or Dr. Rock, and the other is Chimney Rock.
Do you have an image of that?
I used to. Let's see if I can find it.
Again, I don't know if it's a good idea to share it or not. If somebody ends up getting motivated to go there and spray graffiti on it or something, I mean, you just don't know. That's another thing too about keeping.
Be hard pressed to go up there. I've got a picture of me on a boulder. That's the go road. That's what happens during the off season. It's only open for a couple of months out of the year. Let me try to find this Chimney Rock here. I'm gonna go back to another hard drive.
While you're doing that, we'll go do this. Get that back until you find it.
Let's see here.
The thing is it's a lot more. It's so much more complicated than that people.
That's Chimney Rock.
You can blow that up for us so we can see it better.
It's got a charcoal.
Okay.
Got a fire on it.
That's the one. And do you have both of them, or is that just one?
I probably have the other one. I'm going to see if I can find it.
That's one heck of a view, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's up at 4,000 feet. I was somewhere down here. I could hear them chanting. It was carrying down through the valley. Let me see what this is right quick.
I don't know how to keep up with you guys. So if I miss some of you guys' comments, posting it up there, I apologize. Because when you hang out with MK, you start thinking. If you slow down, you start thinking. He starts making you think. Which, it's a wonderful thing to have this opportunity, because I don't know how many more scary stories I can take. So I want to know the truth about some of this.
All right, let's see here.
And West is so vast too. When you think about how huge California is, Nevada, all the way up into Washington, Malheur, British Columbia, we're talking about a huge area. There's something mysterious about it too. It's almost like a place where East and West truly meets. If you think about it, even the Russians were there before us, and the Spaniards, of course.
Maybe I may get luckier finding it on the internet. Let me see. There may be a picture.
He does. We're fortunate to have him here.
I have to get off this, I believe. No, I wouldn't. I can get an extra window up right here. Oh, it's back behind. Let's see. There it is. I'm not really that used to the module, and I'm learning it. Let's see. Let's see.
Well, I can, while you're figuring it out, I'll share it. Well, I don't know. When you're figuring it out, just go like this. Okay. Till you figure it out. Yeah, I find the West fascinating. I'm probably wrong in certain degrees, maybe the whole thing, but it seems like what's going on, or what did go on in the areas of Nevada, Arizona, the Four Corners, Utah, all the way up to the West Coast, the British Columbia, they had just a different. It's almost like, okay, there was the Mississippi River that divided the East and the West, but then there was the Rocky Mountains that divided the West, from the West, from the desert plains and everything. And I think that what was going on then, and if you also tie in cataclysmic events, the theory, and you look at what was going on in Nevada, what was Nevada 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago? And do things change that drastically and that fast environmentally? Because, I mean, you guys are fine, so you find footprints outside of Lovelock Cave, and footprints could last a long time. How old are those footprints?
Oh, that's in Oklahoma. I haven't found it. There. I don't know where a picture is for Medicine Peak.
I'll tell you what, I'll start sharing some images while you figure that out, some from you. And when you figure it out, you figure it out. In the meantime, there's images to be shown. Because, I mean, what's going on out west was pretty bizarre. I mean, we talk about around Lovelock Cave, Pyramid, is that what it's called? Pyramid Lake? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
And it just like looks pretty clear that there actually was, it could have been a pyramid at one time there that has been weathered away. I mean, it could be just happenstance. Could be happenstance.
It could be. But, it's hard to form a pyramid, with equal sides and everything. And for each one of those sides to bend at the same place, it's like the bent pyramid in Egypt. It goes steeper and then it goes not so steep and then turns steep.
This is less strange. Devil's Tower is a very strange anomaly as well. You don't see too many of those things. It's quite reasonable for people to ask some questions that maybe some people think are.
I don't have one of Medicine Peak. It's the next one over from this one. It's hard to find these pictures.
Okay, I'm going to let you share this.
They don't go up there to take pictures.
Stop screen. You add the screen. There we go.
They'll be up here for 30 or 40 days. They'll try to get it. They'll try to becoming in like an emaciated condition, and then that kind of opens up the spiritual doors, and then they try to have a vision.
Well, it's been proven that's exactly what will happen with sleep depression. I'm not saying the word right. Help me out here, Kim K. To be deprived of sleep is
Deprivation.
deprivation. So sleep deprivation, food deprivation, water deprivation combination will cause you to, they say, hallucinate, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not something externally or internally happening that is not part of the supernatural. It's not part of the spiritual realm. You know, there's a reason why people have done this, not just a culture, but all cultures for thousands of years since time immemorial, right? There's a reason why they go through this stuff, because they want to have a certain experience, right? And if the archetypes are universal, then that might mean that there's actually something that's beyond simply biochemical. You know,
Well,
right?
it's there's earth energies that are involved. A trained shaman can feel earth energies. When they build their mounds over here in the mound building areas of the country, when they did build their mounds, they would look for one of those places where they felt the energy coming out of the earth, or either from where two rivers meet, confluence, or sharp bend in a river.
All right.
That ions would flow, and that aids them in having a vision. They would build the mound, and then the shaman would go up on the mound, and he would either take a drug, but not necessarily. The drug helped, but you didn't have to have the drug.
No.
They would beat a drum at a certain frequency, and they would eventually go into this it's like a trance, and then they would have a vision, and when they had the vision, they would get guidance, and that's what the whole thing was about: getting guidance from the spiritual world.
And let's be honest about this too. I mean, these people are much more pragmatic than us today. They don't, you know, we have a much more convenient life, obviously, than they did. You know, that their lives were more about a day-to-day survival. I have a hard time believing that they would simply just do this because they had nothing else better to do.
No, not at all.
No.
They build that mound on a spiritual place. It's a flow of ions. The Great Serpent Mound up there in Ohio was built on that very edge of a ancient meteorite crater. And could you imagine the stressed stone under the ground? That you know, when some rocks are piezoelectric, you stress them and they'll produce electricity. And if there's crystals down there, or quartz or granite that has quartz in it, like that, you stress it, the ions flow, and they can feel it.
Yeah.
You can feel the ions flow around here where there's two rivers meet. They go just like this, and there's 3 Indian mounds built there. They didn't stop with just one.
You guys have the second largest one in North America, don't you?
Yeah. The Emerald Mound it's 8 acres on top.
I think we should do a show on mounds and talk about that in particular.
Now there's a
down
lot.
the road for me is Newark. The mounds there, right?
Do what?
Newark, the mounds in Newark, Ohio, which is what they're known.
Yeah. Ohio is full of mounds. Indiana's another one that's full of mounds.
That's true. It's just an artificial line border that we created, right? So it's all the same area.
Yeah, right. It's all the same area. You're right. But it's the Mississippi and Ohio valleys. You know, they fork and then come to one and go down.
Zimmerman.
The Mississippi is in itself produces electricity. When it goes around those sharp bends and oxbows, and also when it gets down to the lower end, it's so deep that the bottom reaches sea level before the top. And so it begins a really peculiar type of tumbling current that really produces electricity. And these tribes that like the Natchez that are so spiritual, man, that they came from the Pacific Northwest to be there. They originated from the Pacific Northwest. Your history books won't tell you that, but they told you. They said it. And if you, I remember reading about Chief Winnemucca in northern Nevada. They named a town after him, Winnemucca, Nevada. His son was named Natchez. And that's how far is that from the Mississippi River? So yeah, there's a lot that we don't know, and those mounds are everything. I mean, they're willing to die for those mounds.
And they say there's a lot of supernatural stuff that happens.
It is
around it,
It affects people a certain way, so people that are sensitive to it, and then there's the physical manifestations. You get occasionally you get sparks, or little flashing lights. There's but if you go to YouTube and look up Bynum Mounds, it's on the Natchez Trace, and somebody actually recorded on video the lights blinking and sparking on top of those mounds.
I wondered.
They didn't hoax it, then they did.
In this series that we're doing, and I hope it continues, okay, I wonder if we can get a couple characters in here like L.A. Marzulli. I bet you I could probably finagle that. And how about Fritz Zimmerman? He did the book on the mounds in Indiana and Ohio. I think that would be very interesting to have you two, or to have the exchange. You have you're much more studied in this than I am. And I think that would be very interesting. And if you're interested in that, we'll reach out to them and see if they will join us. But I think it would, we've had in the past, there was a couple shows we did with other people. I think we did one with Duke, and I just let you guys roll. And if you're game for that, I'll try to make it happen.
Well, I'm game for it.
Okay.
Those people work hard at what they do.
They do. And this thing is about I just watched a thing with what LA did about talking about Newark and Serpent Mounds. And in particularly, there was a lot of high strangeness going on in Newark. And these circle mounds, these rings, like you see, and these structures like Stonehenge. America has, most people have been calling America's Stonehenge the Georgia Guidestones, which is not true. It's a misnomer. We actually do have an American Stonehenge. It's not really.
I've seen it.
And
I haven't been there, but I've seen it on television.
And there seems to be some kind of alignment with these circular structures, or I don't know. What's the proper name for them? I don't know. There was like the circles within circles within circles. Like there's one actually just out. It's like 47 miles from Mount Hermon that somehow lines up with Stonehenge in England, and then somehow the American Stonehenge.
They get on what is that, ley lines?
They say it. I'm not 100% sure if it actually is ley lines,
or maybe just parallels. There's a lot of them be built on a certain parallel.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's the 33rd parallel or something like that. I've read some on it, but I'm no expert on it.
Yeah, and so it makes you wonder what a lot of these symbols that we're finding in carvings and what are they really trying to say at times? And why did
they go through so much trouble?
Yeah, and here's the thing too. Just because we see the mounds, what was in between them? What was on it? Was there nothing on it at all? How do we know there was nothing on it? Does that make sense?
The mounds around here, we have a real huge mound out at Holly Bluff, Mississippi. And the Peabody Museum came and excavated, and they found the post holes for a structure up on top of the mound. And they produced a book on that mound on their excavations, and they published all the photographs they took, and you can see, the post holes. They just filled in, but they were still there, and it just filled in with dust, over many years, and they were easily cleaned out. If the wood was rotted. Oh, look at that!
You see that? You see the Jupiter? Makes you wonder, what is this that you film? Is this the sun for real, or what do you think of that?
I don't think so. I think it's a symbol for God myself. Now, it sometimes they show the force, the power of God by showing rays. A circle, typically, it means God. A circle with a dot in the middle. There's several varieties. A circle with a small circle in the center means God.
So it means God, for creators, but then
it means Ra.
Source.
It means Ra in Egypt. Ra, guess which is God.
Which is what image I'm trying to catch up with this stuff.
They actually phonetically use that in words. That's what gets me. It's a dual purpose language. You can see the one you had Ramses on. Look, Ra is the circle with a dot in the middle. Okay, that's the first two letters of Ramses. That one with the three coming down.
Oh, there it is.
It means Mise, M-I-S-E.
This is the yellow line right here. Right here.
Yeah, that's this one right here, and this one right here is considered to be a folded blanket. It's got a crook on it, a fold like that right there on the bottom.
Oh, excuse me.
And it's just the letter S. It makes the S sound. So you got Ramesses.
Or Ramses.
Ramses.
Sun god,
Yeah.
Ramsey, or that we had some kind of, obviously, a more, they talk about Atlantis, something similar to that.
This is a hieroglyph that, hieroglyphs. I've taken hieroglyphs that I have studied in a book on the Lost Continent of Mu by James Churchward, and I could read hieroglyphs on rocks in the Southwest, and I knew what they were saying. So there's connections.
How close is this image to, or is this even part of that area?
That's in the Southwest, I think, but I don't know that I can read that one. I know that that's a heron. This right here is a heron, the bird.
Right.
Left, the big one with the feathers coming down. It probably says something like Atlan.
Atlanta.
Atlan is where the Aztecs came from, and it was it's called the land of the heron, the white heron. That's what Atlan means.
So where would that? And that was in the Southwest.
That's in the Southwest, yeah.
Is there anything like that today? As far as the land of the white herons, and is there
there's the Aztecs were pretty covered a broad area all the way up to nearly to Canada, and then down into Mexico. And the matter of fact, the language that was spoken up through there was called Uto-Aztecan language, and they all can kind of correspond with one another. They may not be exactly alike, but they're close enough that they can talk
all those people that speak that, are in that language group, Uto Aztecan. I have one that you can read. Hold
So
on.
there's Pyramid Lake. There's a pyramid. There's all these hieroglyphs. They suggest that was they're talking about Ramsey in the West, and it seems to me whatever was the West, it was much more of a beautiful, flourishing. It had lakes, it had fauna, wildlife, and all of a sudden, like overnight, it turned into a freaking desert.
Well, that I don't know. I don't know how fast it took them, but one time it was well watered. There were 80 basins in Nevada and down into Arizona and New Mexico. They were all full of water, and they connected with the Pacific.
Well, if we found bones, we found these hieroglyphs, we found certain structures throughout the West, especially the Southwest. And this goes back to these cataclysmic events that happened, like with the theory being that when it does happen, it's not progressive. It happens in a moment, like a polar shift. It happens within a day type of thing, right? One moment, the North Pole is, in another part, of the globe, right? Where today where it is, all of a sudden it will be in the middle of Africa. Just like that kind of, that's the argument that they say. I don't know if it's true or not, but they're also to say there's a lot of geological evidence to support that whole idea, right? That they have these extremely fast cataclysmic events. And I don't know, there's something, there's so much mystery, just history just going 500 years. Heck, just going 300 years, going 200 years, especially in the Americas. You know what I mean? What did happen? Did something major happen around 700 years ago? I mean, how did one moment the Mayas, they have this great empire, and the next moment is no longer there anymore? They just walk away from it all. And then they have these traditions about saying that we didn't build these things. There was something else built these mounds and built these structures. Many of the Native Americans, I know there's one that lives close to me. He's argues with there's a lot of conversations, presentations about the Serpent Mountain in Ohio, and he swears that the native or indigenous population, they had zero to do with it. Zero. So it's and it's a big issue. It's an important issue. Trying to work this stuff out. It's the challenge without sounding like you're just making up stuff or just going with the latest fad. But it's so allegedly many of the indigenous people in America said they did not build these structures. They did not build these mounds. Somebody else did. Then we're thinking about Sasquatch, and we think about Patty, and these big things that are almost human-like or very human-like in nature. And it's only natural to go over there and say, is there a correlation between all this? And Fritz does a pretty good job of kind of putting some of the dots together as far as traditional, but still, how did this all just disappear overnight? Of course, it's not literally, but as far as time goes, a generation is overnight. I mean, it's like a second. How can a generation just all this history and everything just disappear unless there was something It's much more than just even the Smithsonian Institute. It's almost like there was a collective agreement by the oligarchs and the plutocracy, the ruling elite, to just bury an awful lot of the truth, especially what was going on in North America. And people forget that North America, that the Indian Wars didn't even only ended a century ago, about 100 years ago. And
I'm still looking for that hieroglyph that I was going to show you how you could read it, but I can't find the right one on short notice.
That's all right. Probably about time to wind down for this session anyway. It's been about 2 hours, but
if I'll tell you this, if you see on a hieroglyph, if you see a standing deer, a deer standing up on its hind legs, that means first man. If you see a coil, the spiral that opens up to the left, it means to come. If you see a coil that opens up to the right, it means to go. If you see, let's see what else. You don't really have to know what the meaning of too many symbols are before you can start to figure out those hieroglyphs, what they're talking about. The one I read was very spiritual. It was a story about creation, very similar to Adam and Eve. The standing deer is called a ki, Ki. It's the same ki as the Sumerians. Ki means earth. Ki, that's like Enki,
right,
heaven and earth. But the story went that the two deer were there. They had the symbol for God above them, and they had the symbol for God's power as applied to man. A wavy line coming out of that circle toward those two people, and that they were speaking. They had an arrow coming out of their mouth and going to heaven, meaning they spoke directly to God. It was very similar to the Bible story. The only difference was that the woman was on an equal with God. I mean, with the man. There were no superiority of the man over the woman, because they had a male deer standing with no horns and had a female deer standing with horns. And that meant that they were both co-equal, crisscrossed. So, that was the story, their creation story, very much like that found in the Bible. First man. They don't just sit there and chisel on those rocks for nothing.
No, they don't.
They had a serious story to tell.
I think it's all intertwined. I get the impression that these quote unquote giants, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, grassmen, these mounds, these circular mounds, ley lines, hieroglyphs, there was something. And I have a hard time believing the time. I'm not saying that this place is not billions of years old. I have no problem with that. What I have a problem with is the timeline of trying to push everything back so far, maybe 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 years, knowing how weathering is and how erosion is and a lot of other things.
Well,
I got a feeling this stuff happened a lot.
What is a year?
It's man-made construct of the sun.
It's a measurement of the distance it takes the time for the Earth to go around the sun.
Right.
What if it was closer to the sun or something, and was in times past and went faster? Would that still be a year? Things change.
Yeah, it would be. It would be in a way. I mean, it's like, because if
Something happened.
If
Something
it-
happened to the Earth that was cataclysmic. There's no doubt about that because the Earth is still in a perturbation from it. It wobbles. It's called precession.
right.
And if you sped it up, you can see it's very unstable. It just shakes like quivers, you know. And the moon does too. The moon rocks back and forth like this right here. They're both affected by whatever happened. They have it's called resonance. The resonance is still there. It hadn't settled out.
And what if this happens a lot more often than we would like to admit?
Well, I mean, when we measure time, we measure it according to how things are now.
Right.
But it may not have always been like that. We may not have always had the moon. If the moon were not there, then the Earth would spin much, much faster. The moon regulates the spin of the Earth. So you see what I mean? We don't know at what point that we captured the moon. We don't have any idea. We know that it's moving out away from the Earth at about 1.5 inches a year.
Well, there's a theory out there that something might have brought it into our.
Well, if you can reverse that, at some point in time, it was much closer to the Earth. You see what I mean? So you get something that big with that much mass, real close to the Earth, then it's everything's going to be in violent convulsion. And it's moved out to where it is now, and it's steady moving out, has less and less effect on us.
Well, it brings up the hypothesis, but I don't know how much validity is in it. Of like almost the moon itself has like a coil action where it goes out and comes back and coils out. I don't know how you can validify that, but not. But what if, when you have these cataclysmic events, it is all associated with the sun more. I mean, with the moon more than the sun.
Maybe. I had an animation of that. Oh, actually, it was a photographic animation. Let me just see if I get lucky and just type in the moon and see what happens. See if I still have that.
I don't understand what's going on. Do you have two monitors or just one?
No, I just have one.
It might be a good idea to get two monitors. You would have less of this, what's going on there, that. That's what I use, two monitors. So one to present images or to share, present, and then the other one to as far as on the show. They're pretty cheap to get a second one used, so if you get around to that, might help you out.
This, like I said, this is all kind of new to me. I haven't had much experience with the this type of broadcasting.
Well, I want to end this. We can still talk if you want.
No, that's all right. We do it another time.
Yeah, well, I want. Hopefully, we do it real soon, like we just did. This will be the end of part 2. The reason why, because I'm 55 and I got to use. I got to use the bathroom, man.
67, and I have to do double.
So after 2 hours, I think I was pretty proud of myself for holding out for over 2 hours.
There you go.
That's pretty good, But we'll talk more about this. Think about that. Let's think about. We never even got any chance to go into great depth about Lovelock Cave, but we did get a chance to look at some of the detailed images of Patty, and we got a chance to talk an overview of some things that the more and more I study this stuff, the more and more it's hard for me not to seem or to project, at least, that assume that there's a correlation between all this stuff. And this place, not too far ago, I mean, I'm not saying like 100 years, who knows, 500 years, but I mean, the time you get to the time of Christ, things become very blurry.
Yeah. You guys, they call that the mists of time.
And so, what could also be contributing to that, and this is one of those arguments they have when it comes to the cataclysmic events, is that we build ourselves up to a certain point and something happens and it sends us all back to the Stone Ages. And we build ourselves up and it sends us all back to the Stone Ages. And this is part of the cycle of life in this place as well. And if wonderful, what we're seeing is images or memories of that time past, literally, in which things were so much different than they are today.
Well, you can look at the moon and see how beat up it is, especially on its backside. And you can watch it do this if you speed it up, and that's what I was going to try to show you. It rocks like this right here. So it's going. That's what you call a perturbation, or a libration. Libration. Sometimes it shows the southern side more. Sometimes it shows the northern side more. But it rocks back and forth between them, and that's leftover resonance from a violent event. Something that was so geomagnetically violent that it both the Earth and the Moon were affected, and the Earth ends up 21 degrees backwards, leaning and spinning in a wobble. And the Moon is doing this right here. If you do them together, that's what they're doing. And that's pretty clear. That's from a violent event. It takes over time, it'll settle, but it's moving away. So its effect on the Earth is going to become less and less. The Earth will actually speed up. As it moves out, the Earth will speed up the rotation.
I just wonder if that's what they do. It's kind of, there's this coiling effect where it goes out, comes back in. Just like the wobbling has this never any pure stability.
I don't know if it will come back in or not. If it has an elliptical orbit, that'll bring it closer and farther. But actually physically changing its orbit, I don't see anything to make it do it unless something exterior force, intervened and did it.
Well, there's a theory out there that they call the Phoenix effect, right? The rising of the Phoenix, and that its real true symbolic meaning is something electrical or something electromagnetic. Something happens, and which maybe there's a combination of what the sun is doing, alignment of this planet.
There was something so violent that it caused 2 continents on the Earth to sink into the mantle. The crust of the Earth actually broke up and gave way beneath them.
Right.
And they sank into the mantle. And the Earth was in an egg shape. Just like the tides are now. The tides are in an egg shape. You have you have a tide on one side of the Earth, and then you have another tide on the opposite side. And the water is actually in an egg shape, and that egg moves around like this. So you have 2 tides in 24 hours. But that's quite a disturbance. But if the moon was a lot closer, the crust of the Earth would start to do that. The crust of the Earth would start to split and break, and you would violence like you never could imagine.
Yeah, I'm just. A lot of people are starting to think. I think they were thinking about this. Those in the know, especially because geology and geologists and etc. and historicists and anthropologists were thinking about this 100+ years ago, and I think they might have had some validity. I think a lot of people are coming back to this whole idea of the cataclysmic events that happen, and a much more disturbingly more regular and more short periods of time. Instead of millions of years, we're talking thousands of years. Which now it could make sense, and it could be because they're finding in areas all over the world where there shouldn't be.
Well, if the Earth were, say, it didn't have a moon, and it was spinning at double the rate, day and night was coming at twice the rate, and it's not leaning backwards; it's leaning perpendicular to the sun. How much less would you weigh at the equator? Right now, the way it's spinning now, you're about 5 pounds less at the equator. But it would go up exponentially if you doubled it. So maybe those big megalithic stones didn't quite weigh as much as they back then. Or maybe a 100-ton dinosaur was only 50 or 40.
Relatively speaking.
Yeah, relatively speaking. All things should be considered. They're so outlandish under present conditions that we scratch our heads and say, well, they must have an anti-gravity machine or something. We try to come up with a way. But it would probably that would probably work too, if there was no moon, and the Earth was spinning rapidly.
Well, isn't that the legends that there was no moon, not too distant past, and that Venus was a lot closer?
Well, when all of that is considered, definitely is a possibility. Mathematics will tell you that the moon wasn't always there.
Look, the phases of Venus and the phases of the moon, they're very similar, aren't they?
The moon actually came from somewhere. It's there now. It has to bring it in, just to bring it in, and within the gravity field of the Earth is tremendously violent.
And we look at the old. I'm going to bring up something else. So Jesus says, allegedly says in the Book of Revelation, "I am the bright and the morning star." Right?
Yeah.
And the reference of astrotheology throughout the scriptures is quite overwhelming. It's overwhelming, to be honest with you. And so, what does he mean by that? Because that's like a reference to Venus.
It is a reference to Venus. That's the morning.
So, what if
Venus is both? It's the evening and morning.
What if what birthed out of Venus was the moon? It doesn't necessarily mean that it literally happened, but from you say you are here 2,000 years ago, or whatever it was, because even the dates of it are questionable. And just say you're there, and one moment Venus is a lot closer, and you're paying attention to the phase of the Venus, and something cataclysmic happens, and somehow this thing we call the moon shows up in the process, mirroring basically the phases, but in just a little time difference as far as the year goes, right? Where a year is on Venus compared to what is here. And I just I wonder something bigger happened than we're being told, right? What I'm saying is
in these tablets in Sri Lanka, when they were able to translate them, it told a story of the sinking of Mu and of Atlantis.
Right.
And it said that it was a geomagnetic disturbance, something from space.
And then there's many people feel that disturbance was the moon itself.
Well, I guess it's that possibility is there.
But so then if you look at it and you look the way things, like from where we're seeing it, you just like something major happened, and we're not watching. You would think, with all this time, we should witness more kind of asteroid impact on the moon or something like that. You know what I'm saying? We're not seeing any of that kind of stuff. Like something major happened a long, long time ago, or not so much a long time ago. That's all a question. But
I really don't know what about those type things. What it would take to sweep away the debris from that, or anything like that. You have to work out those logistics and see if they fit.
well, this is just maddening. You would think after all this alleged stuff that's happened over the past 50, 60 years, that we would have a little better understanding of some of these things. And we just need to.
Well, I mean, there's
Like Bigfoot research, there's always more questions than answers. It just keeps building upon question upon question upon question. And I just like, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying.
well, logic tells you that because the moon is spiraling away from us, that you can apply mathematics to that in reverse, and you'll know that the moon was much closer. If it was much closer, it was tearing at the earth, at one time, and so it's moving away, and now we're in a state of a lot calmer, even though we still have this little precession going, and it's still going like this. But we both together, but it's making its way back away further and further. Over long periods of time, it'll eventually go too far out to do anything to us. We'll speed up. Our day won't be 24 hours anymore. It'll speed up.
Yeah. Well, let's end this. Let's talk more about this. This, as usual, it leads us on all sorts of places.
All right. Well,
literally, it has led us all sorts of places, from Lovelock Cave to the mounds and to the second largest mountain in North America down where you're at, which we should do something more about. Yeah, and to the moon itself and the relationship of the moon and Earth. So nothing is as it seems. I need to use the bathroom, so this will be end of part 2 of the series of MK Davis, and I sure hope in the next week or two we have part 3.
Well, anytime you want to.
Well, yeah. So I will reach out to you in the next couple of days. You got anything else going on? Anything to let people know about?
No, not right now.
You guys, he's on. You can look up. It's just MK Davis on YouTube, and it's worth paying attention to what he's doing, because the lessons. He's one of the. I have to be seriously honest about this. He's one of the few places out there that you're actually going to learn something if you just pay attention. It's difficult at times to understand, because you got to sit back and actually pay attention. It's not a bunch of imagery.
It's a complex subject.
Yeah, I mean, so thank you, my friend. Okay, everyone else, thank you for joining us. Oh yeah, by the way, for those who are interested, of all people, I'm going to be talking to Mike, Sasquatch, Ontario. That should be very interesting, because we're like,
yeah, for sure,
for his experience, and what nuggets of truth can we gain from that? And I think that he's gone through a lot. There's a lot of criticism about his claims, but you know what? After all this time, MK, and it hasn't been that long for me, but you've been here doing it much longer. But one thing is certain: nothing's impossible when it comes to this stuff, right? And everything's on the table. So
my mind is open, and if I have a reason to disbelieve something, I will. But I just don't just brush it off just because.
I think the approach has to be like trust plus verification, and it's a constant balance between that.
It is.
And when the trust is lost, and I've been burned by this, but eventually the truth usually comes out with enough time. But some, a hoaxer will finally be exposed. Somebody that was, sharing the truth about their experience, there'll be correlations, and there'll be something common, the theme that shows up, and many others. and you say, well, the probabilities are highly there. But here's the problem. Like with my encounters, although I've had, it's been shared with others, I don't even know where to find those people now. It's only been 6 years. I don't have no idea where to find that crow medicine man. I have no idea.
People come and go.
And so I'm still stuck with just my, you have to believe me or not. If you don't believe me, I understand, because why should you until you have your own experiences? So anything's on the table.
Seeing's believing.
It seems to be that's the case. But and then once you see something, do you even know what you're seeing or what to believe in? You know what I mean? It becomes that complicated. It really does. It's one thing to, even if you were to witness Patty and you're as close as they were, you still struggle to the day you die what the hell you were witnessing, what you were experiencing, right?
I'll tell you, what you do is you tend to rationalize it. After a while, you say, maybe it was a bear. But something that's you're more comfortable with. If something bothers you enough, the tendency is strong to after a while try to explain it away and get it out of your system, where it's not bothering you. I know people who said, I saw a Sasquatch. I saw him dead right. He's right in front of me. And 5 years later, it could have been a bear.
I know what I saw could not have been a bear or anything else, but then the same token, it didn't add up to what a patty was. You know what I mean? Because especially when the things are going through trees and popping out trees, and that's all another thing we'll have to talk about. Here's another thing to talk about in the future: is is this place a simulation? How much of this is just a light show?
Subject.
How much?
I don't know who's doing the simulating. That's what I want to know.
Yeah, that's a good question, isn't it? Who is?
He's not doing a very good job.
We're not liking it too much, though. All right, this is the end of the show, folks. We'll see you again soon.